Now, the biggest soccer story for a very long time is still running. And it is, of course, the story of Lionel Messi wanting to leave Barcelona and possibly coming to the Premier League to play for his old coach, Pep Guardiola, at Manchester City. It's an intriguing prospect, and there are complications, and we're covering this story with Richard Fitzpatrick, an Irishman a journalist who lives and works in Barcelona, and contributed a long piece on this subject to the Irish Times at the weekend. Richard, the latest developments being, one of them, that yesterday all the Barcelona players had to turn up for a COVID test so that they could be cleared to begin training today, pre-season training. Lionel Messi didn't show.
Yeah, so training itself, like you say, will kick off this evening at 5:30 local time. And if he doesn't show up to that, he'll be categorised as AWOL. Nobody expects him to show at this stage. The medical test, there was a bit of doubt. The fans of the club are holding out a chance that he might show up for that. But it now seems like the divorce is total. So Messi's camp will meet with Bartomeu, the president, on Wednesday. It will be Messi's father, Jorge, who's his manager and agent. It's significant, of course, that Messi won't be there himself. It's a measure of the distance that is between himself and the president, that they don't talk with each other. So it seems full steam ahead. La Liga did chip in yesterday.
This is quite a significant intervention by the Spanish league, La Liga. They are saying that the player cannot leave the club unless a €700 million buyout clause is met. Now, of course, just as it's a very exciting prospect for the Premier League in England to have Lionel Messi, it would be a mortal blow, or certainly a serious blow, Richard, to the Spanish league and Spanish football, were he to leave.
Absolutely. Look, La Liga are operating out of self-interest. You would have to think, just as an example, 5 years ago, 24 of the best 50 players in the world were playing in La Liga. That's down to 10 now. The clubs across Spain don't have any money. Real Madrid aren't making any signings this summer. Valencia say that their revenue will be down by 50% next year because of the coronavirus and because they won't be in the Champions League. And now La Liga are going to lose their most valuable asset, Messi. And it's not only that they'll lose him. Everybody knew he would retire someday. It's the fact that it's a double whammy. It looks as if he'll be going to the La Liga's biggest rival, the English Premier League. So it's a huge, huge blow to La Liga. So that's why they've come out essentially in backing the club.
Yeah, the legal issue at the heart of this matter is very interesting. And in my view, actually, I don't have legal training, of course. The clause in his contract that allowed him to leave on a free transfer at the end of the season was not triggered on the date due, which was June 10th. The reason it wasn't triggered was the COVID crisis, the extension of the league, and indeed the season until about 10 days ago when Bayern Munich beat Barcelona 8-2. So as June 10th was meaningless in terms of end of the season, I would think legally Messi has a good case to make in law that he exercised his right at the end of the season, which is what the first contract and his contract basically stated. Are people examining the legal ifs and maybes in Barcelona?
Yeah, they are, and the club are very firm on this, at least publicly, that they're sticking to this June 10th deadline that to exercise this escape clause. So they have a very strong legal case as well. But underpinning this is that both sides do not want to go down the legal route.
Yes, I mean, just to sorry to interrupt you, Richard. I would have thought that he couldn't exercise his right on June 10th to declare he was leaving, because it would have been damaging for their Champions League endeavours and indeed their endeavours in La Liga. So he was almost precluded from exercising the right on the due date because circumstances had changed because of the pandemic. Therefore, he was forced and obliged to wait until the season ended before he made this earth-shattering announcement in football terms.
100%. What you can imagine the fallout if he had come out and said
Yes.
that on June 10th. So it's a really interesting point to raise, because Diario Sport, one of the two big Catalan sports newspapers here, they came out with a story, I think it was Friday, claiming that Messi told the club after they lost to Osasuna in the league 2-1 at the Camp Nou in July, which effectively gave the league, or it did technically give the league title to Real Madrid with a game to play. He told the club then he wanted to leave, but the club said, "Oh, this is the boy who cries wolf. It's another Messi hissy fit.
Yes.
It will pass." And they have some reason in that he's retired before from the Argentina national team. He said he wanted to leave Barca a couple of times before, particularly in the summer of 2016 when there was a deal lined up for him to go to Man City, and that deal was sitting on the table all summer. Messi came back from training, back from his holidays, and went back into the dressing room, met all his old friends again. His father said to him afterwards, "Well, so what are we going to do with this Man City deal?" And he said, "Oh, just forget it. We'll stay." So that was the thinking in the higher echelons of the club, that this Messi wasn't serious, or they didn't want to think that he was serious. But he resolved his mind after the 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich, and this long list of grievances he has at the club had finally tipped over. And he said he's thinking, this is what people are surmising, is that the only way to set this in stone was by sending off a bureaufax to the club, which has left everybody, the fans, really, really upset.
Yes, a bureaufax which no one had ever heard of before this row began. As I understand it, a bureaufax has the status of a legal document.
Yeah. I've got them parking tickets myself in through the door. It's effectively when somebody knocks on your door with a legal document like a summons. So it's signed for and vouched. So it's like you say, it's a legally binding document. So Messi sent this off on Tuesday evening at 7:00. Interestingly, for the next 5 hours that evening, Messi surpassed coronavirus in search terms on Google around the world. He became more famous than the pandemic.
We had a scientist talking about the coronavirus on our podcast, Richard, and I have to inform you that when I mentioned Lionel Messi's name, he said, "Who's he?" So it might be a collector's item. That it was very funny. Anyway, to proceed with this, the latest news you have concerns a piece written by Brazilian journalist Marcelo Bechar, who broke the Neymar transfer and the news of this latest Messi transfer request. So it's quite a credible source. What's he saying now?
Yeah, he says the video production team at Manchester City are in train already to compile a video of highlights of Messi's career for his unveiling for the presentation at Man City. So they want to get all their ducks in a row, as well as the money for Messi's signing. It's absolutely the club in pole position to get him for reasons we've touched on before. The Guardiola would be the big determining factor, his relationship with Messi, and they have the financial muscle to do a deal.
Yes, you were just about to tell us before when I interrupted you about the financial rationale from Barcelona's point of view of trying to cut a deal, not the 700 million that the release clause demands, but something more reasonable, because they have their own difficulties now that their new coach, Ronald Koeman, has decided to get rid of Suarez, Jordi Alba, Vidal, several players. They need to go into the market badly, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the crux of the matter. They have to negotiate a deal with Messi. It's in neither the club's interest or Messi's interests to go down the legal route to create a total war situation. In theory, Messi might go on strike for the season and sit it out. Barca badly need the money. We can talk about that, and the president, how badly he needs that money. But they need it for safe phasing measure as well. It is already catastrophic, but to lose the greatest player in their history on a free transfer would be totally unacceptable, as you can imagine. So they will negotiate a deal. That's what all the signs are, that they'll sit down and they'll hammer out some kind of arrangement that all the parties can agree on.
This is an arrangement for his departure.
Yeah.
And in that circumstance, really, we'd be talking about 150 million or something like that. But I mean, when you think that we have to consider that Lionel Messi is 33, but for Manchester City and for the Premier League, it would be an enormous coup. And even at 33, he remains a player like we've never seen before. Yeah,
the age is an interesting conundrum or issue. He's 33, yes. Normally the players would be tapping out at that stage. But if you look at Ronaldo, he's great peer. Ronaldo is 2.5 years older than him.
Yes.
He was arguably as prolific as ever last season, 31 goals in 33 games in the league. And, he scored 2 goals for Juve in their knockout game against
in a tough league where it's hard to score goals. It has to be said, the Italian league. Yeah.
And across sports, LeBron James in basketball, he'd be 36 in December, or Roger Federer is 37 at least when he won his last Grand Slam a couple of years ago at the Australian Open. And Messi is, he's not a playboy. His body is a temple, so he's in good shape. And he said earlier in the year, around February time, that he felt as good now as he has done in years physically.
Now, just a final question or two, Richard. You were telling us last week that the Barcelona fans and people in the city, because everyone in the city admires this institution, that they weren't entirely on Lionel Messi's side. There were some people who resented him or weren't happy. How has that sort of discussion settled over the weekend when people have reflected on all the news that they have?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point to raise. The initial reaction when it was announced he handed in his transfer request was shock, anger, chiefly disappointed because of the manner of the way he delivered his news by bureaufax. That sentiment has hardened now. The longer the silence goes on from Messi, he hasn't said anything. He hasn't said anything since the 8-2 defeat, and more importantly, since he handed in this request for a transfer. It's not the way, this is what Barca fans are saying, and the press here, it's not the way the greatest player in history should behave. Messi, like Ronaldo, would be the great, or it's the only relevant example we have because of the stature of Ronaldo as well. He had, a similar impact at Real Madrid, but Messi's connection with Barca far outweighs that any relationship Ronaldo had with Real Madrid. This is a guy, Messi, who joined the club at 13, and it's really important also to stress that La Masia is the pillar, the cornerstone of Barca's identity.
And La Masia is the youth, the training ground, the nursery where they learn the game, and all these great players, Iniesta, Xavi, have all come out of that great academy, if you like.
Exactly. And Messi is the embodiment of that academy, because he's been so great. Like Barca fans, for many Barca fans, their proudest moment would have been that picture of Messi, Iniesta and Xavi smiling on the podium at the Ballon d'Or Awards, the three of them shortlisted together, all of them from their youth academy. It was an extraordinary moment, just an aligning of the stars. So Messi came to the club at 13, and it was also an extraordinary story because there was huge resistance to the club signing him at the time. He was a pioneer. Nobody was doing these transatlantic deals for 13-year-olds at this stage. Nobody on the board wanted to sign him. They all said this guy is because of his size. He was undergoing growth hormone treatment at the time. On the day he arrived for his first trial in September 2000, he ran out onto the pitch, and this is a fact. He was up to Gerard Piqué's waist, and he was that small. So the club didn't believe in him. It was going to cost them a huge amount of money in relative terms because they, according to FIFA regulations, they were going to have to ship over his family as well, give a job to his father. The club dragged its feet for 9 months. They didn't want to sign him. Messi went backwards and forwards to Argentina. One of the directors put him up in an apartment and paid for his growth hormone treatment out of his own pocket. He just bet on him. So eventually they did the deal. Messi stayed, and he flowered into the greatest player in history, arguably. So, and he's got a huge connection with the club as well. He's a company man. He's unusual for senior players at Barca in that he doesn't have a home physio, or he doesn't go outside the club for medical treatment. He when he goes to the club, he has huge connections with all the trainers there from the academy, asking about their kids and stuff. So it's deeply, deeply upsetting that he would turn his back on the club like this so coldly. They're saying that it's belligerent behaviour, the becoming of a guy like a mercenary, like Neymar, that he would go AWOL from training and not explain himself. So the longer the silence goes on, and the more frustrated and upset Barca fans are. Now look, at the end of the day, 99% of Barca fans are on Messi's side. They'll forgive him any indiscretions over these couple of weeks, but they are very, very upset, and it's the longer the silence goes
it's
on.
almost like a family that he belongs to after 20 years, and having come through the academy with all and the vicissitudes you just referred to, having to go home to Argentina, to come back, being so small. But the other thing, of course, is he is a family man. He has children, his wife. They're very happy. They're living actually quite close to Suarez, who's also about to be booted, and maybe that was the trigger that got Messi to send this bureaufax. There's a long way to go before you think of him going to Manchester with his family, with his children, moving schools. The upheaval involved in all of that for somebody of Messi's disposition still strikes me to be the biggest, if you like, obstacle to this move taking place, Richard. Not money, just the upheaval to his life, his children's life, and of course his wife's life. It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, he's totally. He's a very private man, an introvert by nature. I mean, this is a guy. When he was a kid, he was so shy that the teacher at his primary school in Rosario had trouble communicating with him. She had to get a boy that sat behind him to translate or interpret for Messi. He's a deeply reserved private man. Yes. He's said time and again that he wanted to retire at the city or retire at the club and stay in the city. He's ruled out over the last couple of years a romantic return to Newell's Old Boys, his original club back in Rosario, because it would be too disruptive to move his family who were settled in schools here. And he's obviously deep connections. He goes on holidays every summer back to Rosario in normal times, and at Christmas he went back there to get married in 2017. So he's got ties to Rosario. He doesn't have any connection with the city of Manchester, a country that doesn't speak his language. So that would be hugely disruptive for him, and you can imagine how much that is weighing on his mind.
Yes, although Bielsa, a former Newton's Old Boys coach, has just taken Leeds into the Premier League, so maybe he'll go and sign for Leeds.
Yeah, their stadium is called Newell's Stadium is called after Bielsa.
Yes,
they're both Newell's Old Boys.
Guardiola has described him as the best coach in the world. Just a final question, Richard, about the training tonight. One assumes if he didn't turn up for the COVID test, he can't go to the training because he might be jeopardizing the health of other players.
Correct.
Clearly, the Wednesday meeting between his father and the club is massive. And the final question I have to ask you is your own view of how this plays out when we factor in everything, particularly the last thing we talked about, which is his family. His family's happiness, his children and his wife, being uprooted, and the Manchester weather as well, and all of that. What's your own gut feeling? Has he sort of broken the ties with the club?
Yeah, everybody's dying to hear him speak and come out and explain himself. Is it the relationship, the absolutely broken relationship with Bartomeu, who has so much to answer for? Is that the problem? Is it the sporting project? Again, that would tie back to Bartomeu's handling of the club. He's gone through 5 sporting directors in the last 5 years. I mean,
yes.
Joan Laporta, during the first half of Messi's career, he was president there for 7 years. He had one sporting director, Chiqui Begiristain, who's now Man City's sporting director. So that spoke of the solidity and the consistency that was operating. The club had a vision at the time. Is it the money he's going for? Is it Guardiola? Everybody wants to know what he's feeling.
Is it, Richard, possibly Ronald Koeman? He came back from the new head coach. Koeman is a substantial figure in the game. He scored a winning goal in a European Cup final for Barcelona, if my memory serves me.
Correct.
But he certainly was an outstanding player and is a bit of a hero. Now he's become the new head coach. Messi came back last week to meet him from his holiday. If that meeting was short and didn't go well, and if Ronald Koeman said, Lionel, you're a great player, but I'm the boss, and I don't want any more of this dressing room power stuff, which is quite conceivable that someone of Koeman's stature would deliver that kind of message, that may have been the thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said, Eamon. They had that meeting the day after Koeman was unveiled as the new coach. what Koeman said to him, and this is the comment that has been leaked, is that your privileges on this team are over now. I'm the boss, to use your phrase. You'll have to row in with me. I'm going to be inflexible. It's all about the team now, the squad. And Messi's response to Koeman was that he felt he was more out than in. Now,
yes.
We don't know where these leaks have come from, whether they've come from Messi's camp or from Bartomeu, the president's camp. It's more likely they've come from the Bartomeu's camp. But the tone of the messages, or the content of the messages, I think we can accept as being pretty spot on. There is a big problem with player power at the club, and this is deep-seated. It goes back to Guardiola's time as coach, Luis Enrique's time as coach. The only thing he said when he got the news that Koeman was being unveiled as the new head coach was his problem is going to be managing that dressing room. If we look back at the short tenure of Koeman's predecessor, Kiki Setien, I mean, it was an absolute train wreck. Messi didn't believe in him from day one. He came in January, mid-season. The senior players didn't believe in him. They didn't. Setien used to have briefing sessions on the opponents they were playing in upcoming matches. Sometimes the players wouldn't show up to those meetings. They didn't even give excuses. Messi and Suarez both criticised Setien in press interviews while he was still a coach. And they thought his training exercises were silly and overcomplicated. Setien had to step in one day between Eder Sarabia, that was Setien's assistant coach, and Messi. They were to stop them fighting. This guy, Sarabia, is a buffoon. His father was a great player with Athletic Bilbao in the 80s, a former teammate of Setien's. So the player power in the dressing room, they ran that team. They told Setien, look, leave the kids on the bench today, bring them on at the end if you want. But it was the old sacred cows, as they call them here in the press. They ran that dressing room. So that was the situation that Koeman has walked into. He wanted to tackle that player power, and the problem is it's been so deep seated. The president has abdicated responsibility. He's never tried to tackle that player power. It's the situation at Real Madrid would be hugely relevant here. The president there, Florentino Perez, he overindulged his Galacticos during his first term as president from 2000 to 2006. When he came back in 2009, he said he wasn't going to tolerate any more messing from the dressing room. Remember last year, I think we spoke about it, Sergio Ramos tried to muscle Florentino Perez into contract renewal. He marched up to his office with his brother, who's his agent, and his lawyer. He was trying to leverage interest that his Chinese club had in him to get a good new contract renewal. Perez sent him packing, sent him to the hills. He got no contract renewal. Whereas Bartomeu has just thrown money at his players, given them all long, lucrative contracts. These senior players, all these guys who are essentially over the hill, giving them contracts like Busquets until 2023, Alba until 2024. They're negotiating with Luis Suarez at the moment to get him out of the club. They're going to have to pay up the remaining year in his contract. And that Bartomeu has created that mess. He hasn't had the strength to manage the club effectively. He's just left the dressing room to self-manage around Messi, the number 10, over the last few years. And that's what Koeman is tackling. It's not a pretty sight.
And just the last question, Richard, we're only talking about football, which I think Jurgen Klopp called the most important of the least important things in life. I just wonder, given the awful public health crisis and economic crisis that afflicts every country now, including Spain, and particularly Spain in some regards, where is this story ranking among people in Spain at the moment and the media? Is it really as big a story as one imagines it might be?
Oh yeah, look, it's like when the Beatles broke up. It's it's huge here. Every
Okay.
day, people are focusing about it. I mean, it's an escape, if nothing else, from the situation with the coronavirus. But yeah, for people in Barcelona, in the city, everybody is talking about it.
Okay, Richard, we're very grateful to you for joining us from Barcelona. Rich Fitzpatrick is an Irishman, a very good journalist, working in that beautiful city. And I know, Richard, that you'll keep us up to date with all of this, including the meeting with Bartomeu and Messi's father, which is due to take place on Wednesday. Thank you very much indeed.